Welcome, everyone. So glad you are all here. Really appreciate all your time and all the work that you are doing to support all the great causes that you're working for. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll jump in. So welcome. As you know, we're here to talk about the top findings from Giving USA 2024 and what it means for you. And this webinar today is sponsored by Indigo Skies Consulting, which is my company, as well as the Development Roundtable and the Executive Directors Roundtable. And so glad that you are all here. A little bit about me. I have 20 plus years fundraising experience. I'm an author. I was an executive director for 12 years, and I think that this information is just so important, and I'm glad you're all here to chat about it. I've worked with many organizations. I do a lot of work around capital campaigns, major donors, supporting development plans, all things development. So the topic today is clearly very interesting for me. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to share some highlights of the Giving USA 2024 report. I'm going to share some thoughts and recommendations, and then I'm hoping we have a little time for you to share any reflections that you have. And I want to let you know that there are some slides I'm going to go through quickly just because we don't have that much time. But this is recorded and I'm going to send this out so you can definitely have more time with this presentation, but also you can go to givingusa.org. You can purchase the report. It's a booklet. There's a lot of information there, and I encourage you to consider checking it out. So I'm going to ask everyone to be on mute. That would be really helpful as well. I want to give a big shout out to Geb, who has been so helpful during this. So thank you, Geb, for all your help for this presentation as well. So Giving USA is a collaborative effort of the Giving USA Foundation, the Giving Institute, and Indiana University's Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. So this is a lot of effort, time, and resources have gone into this. It's the most comprehensive annual giving data available, and it's all giving for U.S. organizations for the previous year, which is 2023. And it's been published since 1956. It's the oldest comprehensive report on U.S. philanthropy. So the big picture overview is that charitable giving in 2023 totaled $557.16 billion with a B dollars. That's an incredible amount of generosity that has been invested. However, so while that is a ton of money, the growth has not kept pace with inflation. It's actually the most money ever that's been donated, but unfortunately with inflation, it's less when we adjust for that. And so there's overall generosity and resilience in the giving climate in 2023. So when we look at the 2023 report and the 2024 report, we see that in 2023, it was a challenging fundraising environment after the pandemic boost, right? There was so much money that came in with the pandemic. And so after that, organizations were kind of getting a foothold. And so in 2024, which of course is actually for 2023, the total giving remained relatively stable. And there's some other trends that emerged and some shifting donor priorities that I'm going to be sharing about in this presentation. So I'd like to talk about the overall giving by source. So 67%, over $374 billion, was donated by individuals, 19% by foundations, 8% by bequests, and 7% by corporations. But really, when we adjust that the bequests are really from individuals and through the foundations, a fair amount of that money is through donor advised funds, which individuals make the decisions about. It really still about 84.5% of all giving does come from individuals. So when we look at changes in giving by source, we here you can see I have 2021 versus 20 to 2023 inflation. When we adjust for that, you can see the cumulative change. You'll see in the yellow column that the total is negative 10%. Individuals negative almost 15%. So you can see where they're how this has been impacted. I want to say that if you put questions in the chat, I may not see all of them, but they are going to be, Gab is going to put them in another document and I will see them and probably answer them at the end, but there's something critical, let us know. All right, so when we compare the charitable giving from 1983 to 2023, we'll see that the giving by individuals is declining as a share of giving over time. So in 1983, individuals was 82%, which is really more when you add bequests, and there were probably some donor advised funds, but certainly not as many. And then 2023, it's less, but again, when we adjust for the donor advised funds and the bequests, it still gets us to 84%. So while giving has decreased by individuals, there's still a lot of money coming from individuals, and it's still really leading the sector. And so I really want to point this out because I have conversations with organizations on a regular basis who talk about how they really want to focus on their work with grants and corporations, and absolutely they should do that, but really so much focus should be on individuals because that's where the majority of dollars are coming from. And something really significant is that giving by foundations has grown from 6% of the total to 19%. And so that is really significant, how much more money is coming from foundations since 1983. Oops. So as I said, charitable giving did not outpace inflation. Giving did reach a high in current dollars, but when we adjust for inflation, 2021 remains the best year of giving on record. And you can see the pandemic era giving that there was a really big boost that was really significant to our sector, of course. So the past 6 years, there's been a lot. 2017, of course, there was the tax legislation changes in the United States, and that meant that people had many less tax write-offs when they made donations, and so that impacted giving. Of course, we had COVID-19, the pandemic, natural disasters, humanitarian crises, a recession, and 3 consecutive years of high inflation. So there's a lot that our world and our economy has been navigating. And regardless of all these challenges, there are still there are some red flags I'll talk about and some also positive signs for philanthropy moving forward. So there were mixed results for the sources of giving. You'll see that all 4 sources of giving declined when adjusted for the high inflation, unfortunately. But we'll see, you can see here that the blue is the current dollars and how they did grow, but when we adjusted for inflation, unfortunately, it impacted them a lot. So when we look at giving by individuals grew by 1.6% in current dollars, but it was negative 2.4% when we adjusted for inflation. And there was a lot going on. Disposable personal income did grow by 8.1%, 3.8% when you adjust for inflation. The S&P grew 24%. This was last year, of course. Right now, we're in a different situation. And consumer spending grew 6%. And philanthropy, it does absolutely mirror what's actually going on in the economy, but really the perception of the economy is very important to philanthropy, because when people feel like they have money, then they feel like they can be more generous. So it's really significant that foundation giving surpassed $100 billion. It was the second consecutive year that the foundations met that goal, which is, a lot of money being invested, which is wonderful. And so that you can see the trend over the last 5 years of the increase in foundation giving. So I want to remind people that while there is a lot of money coming from foundations, $400 billion over the last 5 years, when we talk about individuals, we're talking about $1.9 trillion with a T. And so I want to point this out again because it's so important that as you are looking at your development strategies, that you have a really robust effort on working with individuals. Bequests grew in 2023. They've continued to represent about 9 to 10% of the total donations in the last 40 years. And this will be a really important part of future philanthropy. We have the Great Wealth Transfer coming up, and wealth of older Americans grew 30% from 2019 to 2023, according to a survey of Consumer Finances. So ensuring that you have a strong legacy giving program is really important as well. Corporate giving remains the smallest source of giving at 7%. But corporate giving is shifting. And so I think that this number doesn't tell the full story, because I think there are ways that corporations are showing up in partnership and also giving with marketing dollars and other ways that they're showing up with generosity with different vehicles and strategies. So even though it's the smallest source, there are lots of ways to be in meaningful partnerships with corporations who have a lot of generosity to give. So one thing when we look at where the money is going, one of the biggest things that jumps out at me is how giving to religion is declining. That in 1983, 63% of all donated dollars were to religion. And in 2023, it was 24%. But what's interesting about this is that people who go to church, synagogue, mosque regularly, that they are more likely to give. They are just more likely now to give to broader issues, not just to their religion. And you can see other things that have grown: education from 11% to 14%, foundations, giving to foundations from 5% to 13%, giving from health to 7% to 9%. A public society benefit, 8% to 10%. That's organizations like United Way, the Jewish Federation, the organizations that are in that realm. So there's a lot. Arts and culture moved from 3% to 4%. So there's definitely been some growth that is really significant. And also in 1983, I don't even think I see environment on this chart, and it's 3% in 2023. And we'll talk more about that later. So here are the 4 categories that all experience double-digit growth in the current dollars. And education, foundations, public society benefit, and arts, culture, and humanities. And you can see the 2022 and 2023, how they match up. And it's interesting to notice that education and arts reached record high levels, even when adjusted for inflation. And donors continue to support grant-making organizations at high levels. Online giving has grown to more than 10% of giving. Monthly giving rose by 6% overall, which is 30% of all online revenue, up from 27%. And so I just want to say it's so important that organizations have monthly giving programs because, of course, donors who give can provide ongoing, reliable income. And oftentimes they provide a greater lifetime value than supporters who give just once or sporadically. In 2023, giving to most categories grew, except for religion and international affairs did not exceed inflation. But you can see here that there was investment across sectors. And we often see that in times there's a crisis, like in the pandemic, there was a lot of investment in organizations that were, human services organizations that were making people had food and shelter. And now that we are some years out of the pandemic, that we've seen that giving has been more spread out. So looking forward and sharing some insights for the future, there is some optimism in the philanthropic sector as people have been looking at this data that our sector has shown resilience and innovation, and the economy is growing, at least when this report would come. I know today we're in a shaky moment. In 2023 had a strong job market. It outperformed expectations and unemployment was low. Challenges to giving include that inflation continues to be high. There's uncertainty about the future, elections, geopolitical, the economy, and there's demographic shifts. Older donors are reaching their peak giving years. There are more next generation ethically diverse donors. And it's so important to be engaging and building relationships with prospective donors of all ages, races, religions, and backgrounds. So this is actually not from Giving USA, but I wanted to share it because it just came out this week, which is the Q1 2024 Fundraising Effectiveness Report. And this is a collaborative report between AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, their foundation, and Giving Tuesday. And so I want to give some very current information. And the good news of the last few months, this quarter, is that there has been a 4.1 increase in overall dollars raised. And there had been declines in the past 5 quarterly reports. So that's really good news. But the bad news is that new donor retention rate has dropped by 7%. Repeat donor retention rate has dropped by 4%. The donor recapture rate dropped by 17%. And the biggest drop was between donors who give $1 to $100, are community-based donors, which is 59% of all donors. And that was a 10% drop. And so that is, things to say, well, there's more money, but the overall growth is from mega donors. It's not from our community-based donors. And our reliance on major donors is not a sustainable trend. So while we are focusing on, of course, our major gifts programs, making sure that we are also meaningfully engaged people at all levels to be sustaining our organizations and the great work each of you are doing. I just want to give a shout out to the Charitable Act because I mentioned the tax code changes in 2017. And the Charitable Act is proposed legislation to allow Americans who don't itemize their taxes to claim a deduction for their donations, right? So this is something you can talk about your representative if you want to have a conversation with me more about who's doing this work. But in a way, if we can re-incentivize people to invest generously in our organizations, then that's a win for our community and all of the great work that we're doing. So I just want to speak about a few more things. Legacy giving it's taking a more important role in the future. I'm going to be talking about this in future webinars, and it's becoming more of a focus of my work because I think it's so important for every organization to be thinking about how to make sure they're building a legacy giving program. And we've had, of course, a changing landscape with AI, and this brings new possibilities for fundraisers and for donors. But this is a tool, and it's really important to use the tools to save us time. But the reason to save us time is so we have more time to be in real relationships with our donors. because trust, engagement, and relationships is still the foundation of philanthropy. And so we want to use the tools, but we also want to make sure that we are building these real, authentic relationships. So a few things: the sector giving growth. The historical top 3 giving areas were, again, religion, human services, and education. I want to give a shout out to climate philanthropy and the environment as the fastest growing area, especially among new and younger donors. So there's been a lot of interest and investment, and that's been really significant. So a few recommendations as you're sitting on all this data and information. Do you have a solid development strategy? Do you have a good plan? Do you know the return on investment of each of your fundraising strategies? Are you investing in development and marketing teams to not only have people build the relationships, but share the great work and impact that you're having? Do you have a strong donor database? Do you know how to use it? Are you using AI and all the tools that are out there to save you time, be more efficient, and to really personalize your communications? Do you have staffing to sustain and grow the relationships and your fundraising program? And do you need help to do it? A consultant, a coach, training? Do you have the skills and the training that you need to raise the money that you need? Regarding individual donors, stewarding major donors while engaging other giving levels is really important. So of course, sustain the donors you have. I think people are often saying, okay, we need new donors. Where do we find them? And really the best investment of your time is keeping the donors that you have, that it's easier and it's a much better investment to sustain your donors. It's actually very hard to get a new donor to donate again, but to keep someone is often a great effort. So you want to do both. Build your legacy giving program. Monthly giving, already talked about those. And again, make sure that you are really thinking broadly about who your potential donors are. And my third recommendation is don't burn out. I can imagine as I'm giving this data and saying, you might be saying, oh, we have to work on our legacy giving and our donors and this and that, and saying it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. So a few final things. There's a 1-minute survey. So it'd be really great when you exit that your very honest feedback is really, really helpful. So please take a moment to fill that out. If you would like to learn more about Indigo Skies Consulting, that's my work, and to have us as a back pocket resource, please do. You can send a chat, you can reach out at my website or by email. And I want to make sure you know about some upcoming exciting events that we're having. September 11th at 9 a.m., we're having a development meetup in Watsonville. And on September 12th, the Executive Director Roundtable is going to resume meeting up in person at the Community Foundation in Santa Cruz County. And the topic is accountability. That's 9 a.m. on September 12th. And on October 2nd, from 10 to 11:30, we're having a conversation on philanthropy in Santa Cruz County in the Central Coast with Susan True, who's the CEO of the Community Foundation. And these are all in-person events. So for people who live outside the area, I'm sorry, but these are going to be really great. So please mark your calendars. If you are not on my email list, feel free to let us know and we will add you, and you will get more information about how to register for these upcoming events.